You are listening to Filthy Armenian Adventures. This is your host, Alec Mohibian. It is January 7, 2026, 1 year exactly since the beginning of the historic fires that destroyed Pacific Palisades and Altadena. But this is a new year, and the hope is that it will be a very new year. 2025 felt like a rebuilding year, as they say in college sports, when a new coach is hired to fix a struggling program and has to establish a new culture in a first season full of ups and downs. And because lots of players don't fit this new culture and aren't willing to change their ways, there are usually mass deportations, or as they call it in sports world, so as not to trigger any historical sensitivities, exodus. There's usually a mass exodus. And with all the turnover and sabotage and resistance to new ways, and all the damage that has to be repaired from the old failed regime, all the bad habits that have to be fixed, all the talent that has to be recruited, all the new schemes that have to be installed, a rebuilding year can be quite chaotic and uneven. There's usually a disastrous loss or two that sends a message, but also a major upset or two against the odds. And what you're looking for in year one of a rebuilding year, they actually call it year zero now, what you're looking for are improved fundamentals and promising signs. If the right guys are in charge, it's usually in year two that everything begins to take off. It's 2026, and it kind of feels that we've started off the year 1-0. A South American communist shit-tater was snatched out of power without the least resistance while I was turning from one page of Whittaker Chambers' Witness to the other. And the socialist green-walled gas that has pervaded so much of right-wing discourse over the last few years seemed to evaporate overnight. I know that any geopolitical event is more complicated and difficult and whatever than it seems, but I don't care. I have no doubts. I really have no doubts about this one being a win, a very sweet win, even if it was away from home. Winning cures everything. And that will be my last sports reference, I promise you. Although later I will be reviewing a movie, Josh Safdie's Marty Supreme, which ostensibly takes place in the world of ostensible sport, the sport of being annoying. I usually do a review like that as a smoke break. If you're new to the show, smoke breaks are a little feature for paid subscribers, the rug merchants, cigar singers, and oligarchs of the night, where in between main episodes, I do an intimate gut reaction to some topic of the day, a movie, a show, a personal incident, current event, spiritual gossip, whatever, 5 to 20 minutes in length to be consumed over the course of a smoke or a café or something stronger. Just between you and me. I've done over 100 smoke breaks in the last 2 years since I began that series, and people seem to like them. They like the format, and I'll keep it alive. But since it's a new year and I've been seeing a lot of gorgeous, hypnotizing jukeboxes in the Twilight Zone episodes I've been watching, I thought I'd try something different to start out the year and put some would-be smoke breaks into a single Jukebox episode, a little variety show made of casual, off-the-cuff segments divided by songs. A nod to vintage radio, a nod to Theme Time Radio Hour. All you gotta do is put a nickel in the slot on Patreon to dance away. That's what the very first jukebox was called, the nickel in the slot phonograph, invented by Louis Glass and William S. Arnold and installed at the Palais Royal Saloon on Sutter Street in San Francisco in 1889. That might have been the bar William Saroyan had in mind for The Time of Our Lives. I think it's still around. And I think you can still see that very first jukebox in it. The contraption was made of an Edison wax cylinder phonograph fitted with a coin-operated attachment, obviously. And it didn't have electrical amplification. What it had was 4 listening tubes like stethoscopes, so that up to 4 people could lean in privately, individually, and listen one at a time, kind of like the musical version of a Nickelodeon. Songs cost a nickel. In today's money, that would be $1.76. The machine was an instant hit and made over $1,000 in its first few months. That's $37,000 in today's money. Not bad for a nickel at a time little saloon. But it wasn't called a jukebox back then. It wasn't called a jukebox until way into 1940. That usage came from the disreputable juke joints, juke being the Gula Creole word for body. Companies understandably wanted to avoid that sort of association. And it's also understandable why people would have viewed these loud, monstrous machines as erotic, demonic devices. Jukeboxes peaked in the 40s and 50s, 50 years after that first one. And by the mid-1940s, around 75% of all records manufactured were destined straight for the jukebox, where they would get their very first plays, providing important testing data to the labels. The most iconic jukebox is probably the 1946 Wurlitzer 1015, called the 1015 Bubbler, designed by Paul Fuller to hold 24 songs. I love the name Wurlitzer. I don't have to travel back to 1889 or 1946 to imagine what people would say if I showed them a jukebox the size of their palm, with all the songs in the world on it, available to them without limit for the price of 5 fin de siècle nickels. All I have to do is go back to my own childhood, when it was still quite a thrill to slip a quarter in that Seeburg Wall-O-Matic tableside extension and select a song for the entire establishment to hear as we waited for chili fries at Johnny Rockets or a Fat Burger at Fat Burger. Even as late as then, in the 90s, if you showed someone at Fat Burger an iPhone with Spotify, they would probably yelp with excitement and think you've come straight from Utopia, Tennessee. And you'd say, no, you don't understand. You're the one who's in Utopia now, in the 90s, the 60s, the 40s. You have it perfect now because you get to savor the songs. Like we never could over in my timeline, because you have some friction. There's some suspense. There's some effort involved. You have to work for it a little to hear this song. Trust me, you are living a much more intense and complete and integrated experience. And they'll be like, shut the fuck up and give us that double machine before we bust a cap in your nostalgia fag ass. And in a final Twilight Zone twist, they'll realize that the magic jukebox in the palm of their hands that they just jacked from me also contains tweets by a 150-year-old Joyce Carol Oates about how Faulkner's Light in August prophesied racist criticisms of Barack Obama. So stay tuned for the first FAA Jukebox, featuring a bombastic review of Marty Supreme, a deathbed twist from Scott Adams, a brief final thought on the late Brigitte Bardot and the Zelda franchise, and finally, a humorous bedtime story about 2 gay friends who just happen to be Armenian. After this brief message from our sponsor. This is your host, Alec Mohibian, with a quick message before we continue. Based in that great but very troubled place, Hollywood, California, Filthy Armenian Adventures is an interdimensional travel program that takes you deep into the cultural mysteries of our time. In search of truth, in search of gold, in search of lost friends and unsung heroes, in search of John Galt's motor. This show is your antidote to the black pill. This is your guide to the places, the personalities, the ideas and creations the enemies of man don't want you to know. This is your techno-noir investigation into the good, the evil, and the God hiding under our noise. This is where you get the news before it breaks, before it blows, before it burns. The show is supported entirely by patrons at patreon.com/filthyarmenian. As a patron, you get access to twice as many adventures, including the most important ones, the ones with the real facts. Plus, regular brief smoke break spiritual reports on topics of the day. As a patron, you also get exclusive access to our Smash live events. Ask anyone who's attended one, and they will tell you it's an experience you'll never forget. It's very easy to keep Filthy Armenian Adventures alive. You can still listen to the show on your favorite app like Spotify or Apple, and you can do so with the pride that you're putting a little bit of money where your soul is. More patrons means more fuel, more topics, more investigations, more miracles, more secret locations, and forbidden territories around the world, and the world that is Los Angeles, our post-apocalyptic headquarters. It means we'll be able to track down more enchanting figures in the landscape, dare them to abandon their masks, and join our quest out of the darkness and into a golden age. Patreon.com/filthyarmenian. Thank you for being one of the good ones, and enjoy the show.